Hello and welcome to the comfiest bed in the world. It's small but very, very, very cozy, comfortable. So, hope you're doing good. We have coffee if you want any. I made a French press. A French press. But I wanted to show you some of my, I guess, intellectual fixations so that you can go to sleep, because very clearly you are not asleep right now. So maybe we can help. Definitely talking about interests, specific niche interests, should do the trick, and you can go to sleep. So, want to? I've got a lot of things that we can pile around you and show you. So, sounds like a good plan for the evening. What do you think? Yes. Let me move my coffee out of here. It's honestly not that good today. I think I put too much water in it. So today, maybe later, we might have to go get coffee, because this is too not powerful enough for me today. But also there are some days like that where just you need to go get a double shot espresso from somewhere and a cappuccino to wash it down. So I think today might be a coffee day later, but for now it's relaxation time. We can have that to look forward to. I want to show you some of my intellectual fixations lately, and to do that I have I've got 3 books. Boom. What's better than 1 book? 2 books. What's better than 2? 3. So, these are my 3 books that I'm reading right now. And I'm actually reading all of them. I'm reading all of them at the same time. I've never done that before. I've never read 3 books at once, but for some reason that's just how this is happening, and it's a very interesting exercise. So, one of my fixations lately has been on being life itself. I used to be such a hardcore atheist, and my atheism was also a broader skepticism, and I seriously had a bias about people and human life, and I thought that people needed a philosophy or a story or a character in order to function, and that we had made things up in order to do that. And then as I just kept being alive and living life, I had experiences, both outer, external to me, but mostly internal, going through the ride of life, encountering the sublime, encountering synchronistic messages in the world, simply feeling out of alignment and in alignment, recognizing the patterns, I guess, of my feelings and behaviors and feeling, not just feeling, but living through more than just chemical reality. So I'm reading 3 books. The first one, this is Perspectives on Synchronicity, Inspiration, and the Soul. This is by Rico Sneller. I may have shown these books before in different videos for different reasons, but Rico Sneller, he is one of the few academics working at the moment that he's able to speak German and English, and he is able to translate and work with German texts, philosophical texts that have not been translated to English yet, including works by this guy, Ludwig Klages, who wrote this book, The Biocentric Worldview. I love this book. It's one of my favorite books ever. It's the same feeling I get from Nietzsche or many of the German philosophers, even though they have different ideas. And so, what's the big idea? It is essentially that we have a soul, that there is some state or something that we call the soul, and it is a vital energy, or that there are vital energies in the world, in us, and that life has to be lived, and it can't necessarily be intellectualized, and there are deep limits to intellectualizing life. What are those limits? What is the soul? How is the soul? How do we even speak on such a thing? Why is it taboo in Western culture to acknowledge what science is increasingly showing, which is a deep neurological interconnectedness, intelligence outside of the brain as an organ, etc., etc., etc. We see over and over again that reality is very strange, and that some of the traditional structures we thought operated as A actually operate as A, B, C, D, E, and the boundaries between our systems are imaginary. For example, the line between the mind and the body. Book number 2 is The Experience Machine. The Experience Machine. How our minds predict and shape reality. How our minds predict and shape reality, by Andy Clark. So, along with Perspectives on Synchronicity, Inspiration, and the Soul, which is a philosophical work, I have this book of science, a popular science book. And this book is all about a phenomena which is being called predictive processing. Predictive processing, which is, in a very brief way, it is the idea that instead of the brain looking at the world and taking in all the details and saying, square, looking at this, taking in the details, the pages, and then coming to the conclusion that it's a book, that instead the brain has an internal model of what a book is, and probably even subconsciously, without me even knowing it, my brain projects the expectation that I'm going to see a book when I look down and there's a book. So that the brain predicts reality, and then only recognizes when there's an error in its prediction but for the most part projects reality, creates reality all the time, and actually puts the larger macro image out into the world and then breaks that down into detail if it's wrong. And that's how we learn. We learn through what is different, what is the error. And there's fascinating stuff in here about how we will naturally kind of seek out situations that have errors, that put us in the perfect Goldilocks zone of learning. So it's the right amount of error so that we grow, we learn. It's very fascinating. So I'm reading this book, and then the third book I'm reading is I Am a Strange Loop by Douglas Hofstadter. This book is about, who are we? And it even says on the back that deep down our brains, and of course we are just a bunch of chemicals, right? According to him. On a higher level, we have all these neurons, and yet a higher level, right, is a network of abstractions that we call symbols. One of those, the most prominent, is the sense of I, who we are an I, okay? And he's going to talk about, this I is a strange loop where the brain's symbolic and physical levels feed back into each other and flip causality upside down, so that the symbols, I, seem to have gained the paradoxical ability to push particles around rather than the reverse. You can see how that fits with this book, The Experience Machine. We think that reality is one way. Turns out it's absolutely another way. And reality does seem to be a two-way street. We create it, and it creates us all the time. And it's all very slippery and hard to get our hands around, yeah? So, I'm kind of obsessed with that concept. Now, right now, just between you and I, my conception of being is that we have a thing called I, which is a story that our structure tells us, that we have individual selves, even though at a certain level we're all one thing, but that we do have a style of structure of consciousness that gives us an I. That I is fluid, so the boundary layers between the conscious and the unconscious move in what are called thresholds. So your threshold for how much I you have versus how much we, or how much it, or how much some other concept is a threshold. So I believe that we have selves, and I believe that we have two forces, and I think this is where I get very much aligned with this philosophical work and the work of Ludwig Klages and other German thinkers, because I believe right now that we have beings that have an animatable force called the spirits, and we can be spirited, very spirited, animatable, excitable, and we have these concepts, these animating concepts, these drives that work to produce momentum and change. That could be in alignment with you or not. You could be an incredibly hard worker, incredibly motivated to do great evil and harm to the self and to others. So the spirit is value neutral. It's an animated force, and we have those in our cultures called geists. Zeitgeist, different forces that are at work. This thing that we call the soul, I personally believe, is the synchronistic element of, if you can call it our consciousness or our being. It's not something that we possess in any one part of ourselves or in any quantity, nothing measurable. It's not an object. It is a fluid. It is a way of being. But that is the synchronistic element. That is what's responsible for our sense of alignment, a sense of purpose, that deep sense of satisfaction, that state. It's the synchronistic element. So it's not the animatable element. The spirit can be in service of a soul or it cannot. It can cover up the soul. It can betray you. It can act in the service of things that are wrong, etc. Or you can wield your spirit or spirits to produce some sense of alignment, and that is the soul. And the soul's presence is felt and interacted with and understood through things that produce alignment. Sometimes that's introspection, sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's something miraculous. A lot of the time it's just growth and healing and honesty, being honest with yourself, and a magical journey of alignment. But that there are two forces, spirit and soul, and they're very distinct. They're inner forces as well as cultural. They're literal and metaphorical at the same time. I'm reading these 3 books to get a bit of an understanding of conceptions of the self, conceptions of the soul, how we make our reality, and I'm mixing these kind of genres. So 2 kind of sciencey books. One of them, I Am a Strange Loop, is much more creative, and I'm mixing that with philosophy. So, do we have souls? What is the soul? What is the language for these forces that are at work? Because I have experienced all of them acting in me, and I have experienced radical changes to reality. A second consideration is how come very spiritual people I have found lose touch with reality. I'm kind of obsessed with this. That's like a whole nother topic. But I am seriously, I have seen on the internet so many non-dualists, people who believe that we are all one thing. I have seen people who are very into meditation, and they just seem numbed. And maybe they're happier, but there's something off about the whole thing. Almost like they don't have enough spirit. They've got too much soul. And there's a sense of alignment, but they seem weird to me. They're just weird to me. And in a bypassing kind of way. I've met people who are very spiritual in other traditions. Even people who are very into witchcraft and, what have you, paganism. They just seem deeply out of touch with the world. So I felt both when I had a hardcore atheistic worldview that I was deeply out of touch with myself and my body. But as I travel to those kind of spiritual realms, I'm also deeply concerned about the mental state of some of these people who, to me, are similarly out of touch. And I wonder what it is about non-dualism or some of these traditions that just make people kind of glazed over and odd to speak to. Maybe it's because maybe they are so far enlightened that they don't make sense down here in the lower bottom feeding realms of thought and conversation. I don't know, but something about it feels off. But again, it's another topic for another day. This book has the best sounds. The big one. I am a strange loop. Anyway, I am deeply fascinated by the nature of the universe. Everything, my own queerness, my own being, feels so... What are the other realms that are not material? Either I'm not a sack of chemicals, or we radically misunderstand the nature of chemicals, and we make them a lot more boring than they actually are. And we make material a lot more static and boring than it actually is, because there's some intense, wild things that have happened to my own body, to my own consciousness, and to many others. Lately, I have been doing a lot of drawing on wood, because one of my other fixations is on material. I made a video about wanting to be a statue and about kind of physical matters of my nervous system and feeling like a material. And so if I'm going through an intellectual fixation on the soul and on this concept of inwardness and what is the nature of such a state, I am also going on a journey of outwardness, which is a journey of material. And I've been drawing a lot on wood. So I'll show you this piece. It's just this disc, and it features a chair with a leg that's been snapped, a hammer, some nails, and this screaming face, and this black pattern. I like to draw this chair a lot. It represents me, and my stroke and my left leg. So there's the chair again in one of these panels with the leg snapped off, and I'm kind of layering in other symbols that I use a lot. One of the symbols important to me is the stone giant and the little animated life force that the giant's picking up. So all my giants are male. When I draw myself, like a self-portrait, my self-portraits are always male stone giants or male artifacts. And when I write characters, my fictional characters are always female. These things kind of float down to me. But here's me, or the stone giant, interacting with the tiny animated life force, which I call the phenomenal life mind. The phenomenal life mind. This is something that just moves around and can be animated. It's very lightweight, but it creates material reality. So when the giant puppets the life mind puppets the giant. So the two kind of work together, which is how I had to animate myself post paralysis. by animating ideas in the brain that animate the material. That is in the book Ideomotor Theory. That's in the book, this one, The Experience Machine. So, of course, ideomotor theory would be in here because it's about, again, the brain creating reality with images first, which is something that we didn't know was possible, but we do all the time. This wooden block is going to have the leg of the chair that gets snapped off. It's just going to be a drawing of the broken leg, and it's going to have a blue background, and the leg is going to be black and white patterned, so kind of like loud. And then I am working my way up to cutting out a piece of wood of the chair and cutting out the leg and making a big piece. I would like to make a very big piece. That's just a chair, wooden chair, but that I paint myself in. And the chair will be blue, so bright blue, but the broken leg will be black and white. And so I want to laser cut the leg out of wood as a separate piece from the chair, and then kind of like stick it on the chair kind of wonky. So you should be able to hold up the whole chair. It's like a 2D piece of wood, and kind of hold it and interact with it. And maybe I'll even make the leg on a hinge or something where it can move or fold. So I'm exploring wood and techniques for how to make a big wooden piece of art. But for now, I'm practicing and exploring techniques on these kind of flat pieces of wood. I love the sound that wood makes. Also, all that stuff about the soul, when I'm done reading these books and stuff, I'll put together something and we can talk about it, because it's very interesting. I'm going into it with my own ideas, but I'm very curious, coming from a place of learning. So I'm concerned with the soul, the mind, and I'm concerned with the body. And making art is kind of like the best way to be able to talk about some of these things. So what's inside us animates our material that changes the world, and then we ingest the world over and over and over in a cycle. You can call that predictive processing. You could call that the process of becoming ensouled. You can call that life. You can call that whatever. But certainly the whole thing, I think, is so fun and spooky and full of symbols and is totally graspable. And workable. That's why people meditate or journal or light a candle or do a spell, because you can interact with the weirdness of the world. Anyways, on that note, maybe I will leave you with these wood sounds and let you drift off to sleep. And of course, when you wake, maybe there will be time for coffee. Some nice coffee. So I will see you very, very soon. But until then, good night.